Welcome back. As always, we have a word. We'll talk about an important matter with lessons learned through tragedy. We have a song and a great quote. So buckle up, grab your favorite cuppa. You can see I've rearranged the screen so that it's easier for me to pick that up with my right hand and not have to move it over here. Buckle up, grab your favorite cuppa, and let's have a look. Hi there, and welcome to This Day in History for March 27th. March 27th is the 86th day of the year in the Gregorian calendar, 87th in leap years, with 279 days remaining to the end of the year. Today's word is perseverate. Perseverate is a verb, and this is one of those words that Merriam-Webster uses to describe itself. So annoying. So we will dig a little deeper. Actually, I hear the word persevere buried in the word perseverate, and they do come from the same Latin root, the notion of continuing steadfastly or persisting. To persevere, though, is more about continuing on as toward a goal or in an enterprise undertaken in the face of opposition or discouragement, such as in the quote by Samuel Johnson, who said, "Great works are performed not by strength, but by perseverance." I've listened to many a motivational speaker who talked about persevering in the face of difficulties. Perseverate, perseverative, perseverativeness, or perseveration, though, is sort of a different branch of that tree. To perseverate means to repeat a word, phrase, or action insistently or redundantly, often beyond the point of relevance or appropriateness. In everyday use, it can describe someone who's stuck in a particular idea or behavior, mentally or verbally. In psychology or neurology, perseveration is the involuntary repetition of a thought or a behavior. Some example sentences might be, writers sometimes perseverate on a theme, returning to it across multiple works, or her perseverative nature kept her up at night as she mentally repeated the same thing in her mind over and over. Or he kept asking the same question even after it was answered. He was perseverating. Though it sounds like persevere, where persevere means to push forward with purpose, perseverate is more about getting mentally or behaviorally stuck on repeat. Both of these words come from the same Latin root, meaning to persist. The more psychological use of the term perseverative emerged in the early 1900s, particularly as related to studies on brain injuries and cognition. Perseverative. Today's word perseverative, or actually perseverating, was requested by YouTube viewer at T. Ramsire. Thanks, Teresa. And if you have a word you'd like us to look into in this Word of the Day segment, drop it in the comments, and I shall perseverate upon it. And with that, typhoid fever, also called simply typhoid, is caused by the bacteria Salmonella typhi. Symptoms may range from mild to severe, usually beginning 6 to 30 days after exposure, and typically involves a fever, weakness, abdominal pain, headaches, sometimes a rash, and if severe enough, can result in death. Typhoid is spread by eating or drinking contaminated food or water, so risk factors include a lack of clean drinking water and poor sanitation, along with poor personal hygiene. People who have survived a previous exposure to typhoid are less likely to be severely affected, and people exposed to typhoid for the first time are typically more severely affected. That said, in 1900, a woman named Mary Mallon took a job working as a cook for a family in Westchester County, New York. Within 2 weeks, people began getting sick. In 1901, she moved to Manhattan and started working for another family. When members of that household became ill, she moved on and went to work for a family of a lawyer. 7 of the 8 members of that household became ill. She left there and went to work for another well-to-do family. This went on one after another, Mary going to work as a cook for a family, members of that family becoming ill, and Mary leaving that family to go work for someone else. Typhoid outbreaks typically occur in unsanitary conditions. It's one of the things to be careful about in disaster situations where clean water becomes unavailable. So it was remarkable and alarming that these well-to-do households with running water and ordinarily sufficient facilities were coming down with typhoid, some cases fatal. A private detective had been hired to run down the source of the infection. Eventually, he discovered the one thing that all these typhoid cases had in common, and that was Mary Mallon. And she appeared to be perfectly healthy herself. Up to that time, the idea of healthy carriers of a contagious disease was unknown, even in the medical community. Investigators initially thought she must be deliberately initiating these outbreaks, where Mary just thought typhoid was everywhere and the outbreaks were caused by contaminated food and water. Well, they were, but they were contaminated because Mary didn't wash her hands. That wasn't so unusual at the time. Germ theory hadn't been fully accepted just yet. Mary would not believe that she was a carrier and was unwilling to stop working as a cook. She was placed in mandatory quarantine from 1907 to 1910. She was released on the promise that she would take hygienic measures to protect people with whom she came into contact, and most importantly, that she would not work as a cook. But she'd always made good money working as a cook, and after a few years she started cooking again. She couldn't get a job as a cook for well-to-do families anymore, so she worked in restaurants and hotels under assumed names. Everywhere Mary worked, there were outbreaks, and she changed jobs frequently. In 1915, she went to work at Sloan Hospital for Women, and another outbreak began. 25 sick, 2 dead. One of the doctors in charge contacted the investigator who had tracked Mary down the first time, and on March 27, 1915, Mary Mallon was returned to quarantine, where she would remain to the end of her days. Typhoid Mary. Wash your hands, people. Warm water and soap. Today's song is Stop in the Name of Love by the Supremes. Another hit written by the Holland Dozier Holland writing team at Motown Records. As is so often the case, the song was inspired by an actual event experienced by one of the songwriters. Lamont Dozier said that his girlfriend had cheated on him. They had words over it. And in the heat of the argument, he said to her, "Baby, please stop in the name of love before you break my heart." Nearly everything can serve as inspiration to a creative, can't it? The song was written, the Supremes recorded it in January of 1965. It was released in February, and here we are, number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 on March 27, 1965, for the first of 2 weeks. Stop in the Name of Love by the Supremes. Link in the description. Completely aside from anything, I just want to tell you that there's a particular brand of canned beans in the United States called Bush's Baked Beans. They make several different kinds of beans. And I haven't watched television in years, but back when I did, I remember seeing a series of TV commercials for Bush's Baked Beans that featured Jay Bush and his dog Duke. The tagline of those commercials was, "Roll that beautiful bean footage." And they did it in a pretty amusing way. Sometimes when I'm working on these videos, that phrase goes through my mind. And it came up today, and I got to thinking about it, and guess what? Some of those commercials are on YouTube. So I've included a link in the description for you if you want to check that out. Roll that beautiful bean footage. Now for today's quote. The Vulcan salute is a distinctive hand gesture made famous by the 1960s TV series Star Trek. It involves raising one hand with the palm facing forward. Make sure we're on screen. the thumb extended and the fingers split between the middle and ring finger. Actor Leonard Nimoy created the gesture for his character as a greeting used by the alien Vulcan race. It has since become a well-known symbol in science fiction circles and broader nerd culture. The phrase "live long and prosper," often paired with the salute and quoted by millions of Vulcan and Trekkie fans, was actually written by the science fiction writer Theodore Sturgeon. We note that, and we thank Leonard Nimoy as Spock for introducing this to the world. Live long and prosper. Alrighty, y'all take care. Be good to each other. I'll see you next time. We don't have to worry about that. What is that? What is that? Okay. Let's scoot this over again. Right over here. With 297. Nope. Thank you so much for watching. See you tomorrow. And I think that's going to do it for us today. Thank you so much for watching. Consider subscribing if you haven't already. Feel free to share this video with a link in your email, messaging, or social media. If you enjoy this series, you can check out the playlists in the description. You can find me on BitChute, Facebook, Rumble, YouTube, and X, as well as a blog page called No Really. All those links in that description. Alrighty, that's all I can think of right now. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.